crime doesn't pay. Unless you get away with it, of course, then you're laughing. But to get away with it, you sort of have to be smart. You need to put in a lot of planning, make the perfect getaway, and of course, cover up all traces that you were there. And if you do it right and get away with it, you can make a whole lot of money. But unfortunately for them, most criminals aren't really that smart. So in today's video, of course, we'll be going through some of Australia's dumbest criminals and showing you guys at home what not to do when you want to commit a crime yourself. Anyway, that's enough waffle for now. Let's get into it. And first off, we'll start with a modern classic. Now if you rewind this video about 10 seconds, you'll see a red Jeep driving off a pier straight into a body of water. Now this all started when the man driving the Jeep got the attention of the police for running over this lady's bin. And this would eventually evolve into a 3-hour police standoff where this Jeep somehow ended up on a pier. Now this man was bouncing his Jeep off the limiter and yelling at police, even getting out at some points to yell at him even better. And at one point he managed to get some speed up and ram the cop cars that blocked him onto the pier, shit mixing the car in front in the process. And hey, I gotta say, if I worked for ARB, I'd be hiring this man as a brand ambassador. Anyway, with nowhere to go and the rear left wheel hanging off the side of the pier, instead of jumping out of the car, ditching it and trying to make a getaway on foot, he decided to put the Jeep into drive and gun it. And of course, the rest was history. Now obviously after this, the cops rushed in because it's not like he was going anywhere anyway. And after a quick argument and swan dive, the police jumped in, tackled him, and that was it. And after dragging him out of the water and carrying him away in the scorpion position, that was all we really saw of him. I hope he's doing well, and I hope his Jeep isn't too far gone. And while this may not have been the smartest crime that any of us have ever seen, it did make for some good TV. Anyway, with that out of the way, it's time to move on to our next criminal. Now we've all seen Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Well, what if I told you Australia had its very own version? This here is George, the pirate of Circular Quay. One day, George decided to climb up the ropes onto a cruise ship that was parked in the busy hotspot of Circular Quay in Sydney. Now look, if you want to do something illegal, the usual rule of thumb is to try not to be seen. But our boy George here climbed up the mooring lines of a cruise ship in the middle of Circular Quay. And for those of you who don't know, Circular Quay is quite possibly the busiest spot in the country at any given time. Anyway, as expected, as soon as he climbed those ropes, millions of people whipped out their phones and started recording him. And of course, a police boat was swiftly dispatched and he was lowered onto the poop deck. Now unfortunately, by the looks of it, he didn't even get the chance of a parlay and was swiftly paraded through Circular Quay in handcuffs. And just like that, it was all over. Or was it? Later on, when Captain Slack Sparrow ended up in court, we got to find out the motives behind this odd stunt. According to him, he was doing a performance for himself.
Despite being tight-lipped outside court, inside he told the magistrate it was all a stunt. He was performing for himself.
And was under the impression that the cruise ship was going to Europe. But unfortunately, the cruise ship was actually going to Queensland, so he's probably lucky he got arrested anyway. And with all that said and done, there was one last thing for him to do. This absolute gem of an ankle breaker on the 9 News cameraman. Next up, we have Australia's version of Mr. Beast. Towards the end of 2022, an Australian man named James, which coincidentally is the same first name as Mr. Beast, failed to appear at his court date for charges of domestic violence and property damage. Naturally, the police posted his mugshot out on social media in hopes that the public would snitch on him. And this here is the mugshot in question. Now obviously, this wasn't enough for the Australian public to be able to track this man down. People were begging for more details about the man's appearance and what to look out for, resulting in comments like this, and this. Anyway, about 2 weeks later, somehow they managed to track down Mr. Beast hiding in a house in Sydney. Now I'm not sure how they found him or if anyone snitched at all, but I think he had a few distinctive tattoos that gave him away. But hey, I may be wrong. Anyway, with Mr. Beast back in custody, contrarily to what seems to be happening these days, he was denied bail. And that's about all there is to say for Australia's Mr. Beast. I mean, it makes it a little bit hard to build wells in Africa when you're stuck in a jail cell in Australia. Anyway, the lesson that we learned here is if you're gonna do a crime, don't make yourself recognisable and always wear a disguise. Now next up we have one of my favourite types of crimes, but quite possibly the stupidest of the bunch. And that of course is the poo jogger. Now throughout the year, Australia has had plenty of poo joggers. We had this guy here who lost his job and got caught red-handed. Then we also had this guy, and this guy. But recently, in WA, there's been a new poo jogger on the scene. This lady, pictured here, cutting fudge at the front of the ADSA Health Hub, which seems to be a clinic for asbestos-related diseases, has garnered attention of the media and the public nationwide. Now, the reason I find this so funny is that if you've ever watched any crime movies or something like Ocean's 11, you know that the last thing you want to leave behind is a DNA sample that proves you were there. And while a turd is not the best source of DNA to leave behind at a crime scene, it still can be used. Now, this poo jogger first dropped a steamer at the ADSA back in December of last year, and then another one in March, another one in April, and then finishing off the quad feed again in May. And look, I'm no angel. I've had to pop a squat and squeeze one out in a park before. But if you're gonna do this, the best course of action is usually to find somewhere like a bush where no one's gonna see you, and preferably not at the base of the disability ramp. But let's have a look at the real crime here. I personally have no issue with squatting down and letting one fly if you need to go, but you should always at least attempt to wipe your barty hole. I mean, it is 2025, you can't just let it dry and crust off anymore. Anyway, I get that when you gotta go, but it's a little bit dog doing it at the asbestos diseases clinic. I mean, the people going in there have sort of got enough on their plate already, but if you can find the local MP's office or even make it to Parliament House, I've got no issue with anyone cutting fudge on the stairs there. And if you're lucky, you may even find some pamphlets that you can wipe your barty hole with. At the moment in Australia, it seems that criminals love to firebomb businesses. Whether they owe them money or they're just doing it for the love of the game, who knows. But recently, mostly thanks to the tobacco wars that we have going on, the number of firebombings recently has absolutely exploded. Thank you, I'm here all week. Now look, I've never firebombed a business that I'll admit to, but let's say hypothetically I was to do it. Surely the first rule of firebombings is to not set yourself on fire. Well, apparently that's a lot easier said than done. Now what you're seeing here is a man in Melbourne's northeast dousing a restaurant in petrol, getting ready to burn it down. Now either the cleaners put a bit too much soap in the bucket last night when they mopped the floors, or he's been inhaling the petrol fumes on the drive over. Either way, this crook was all over the place. Then, instead of lighting the building on fire when he was outside, he lit himself on fire while still in the building. Now after realising his mistake and while still on fire, he made a mad dash for the exit, where he did a pretty pathetic attempt at stop, drop and roll, looking more like a trout dropped on the floor. But as far as I'm aware, even though he didn't even bother to cover his face, he still hasn't been caught, so I've got to give him props for that. But this isn't the only time a firebomber has set themselves on fire during the act. In December of last year, we had this guy do it as well. Now I'm not sure if they were intending to firebomb the business because they never actually got to do it. But from what I can put together, one of two things happened. A, they were trying to firebomb the business and it backfired miserably, or this guy right here was telling a lie. And as we all know, liar liar, pants on fire. Anyway, after setting his slacks on fire, he decided to run off while taking off the pants on fire, exposing his bum cheeks to the CCTV. So of course, if you recognise these bum cheeks, call Crime Stoppers and let the police know. But yet again, this isn't the only incident of this happening. It happened again here. This guy wearing high vis while doing crime for some reason also set himself on fire. Then again, in Western Sydney, we had this guy who set his hand on fire and then decided to jump in the bush like that had put it out, starting a bushfire in the process. Anyway, that's probably enough about arsonists. I'm not sure that YouTube really likes you putting videos of people setting themselves on fire, and I don't really want any of these guys setting themselves on fire while trying to firebomb my house. Now before we get into our final dumb crook, and after you press that subscribe button, it's alright, I'll wait. Good. We've got this honourable mention. Now this one's not too dumb, but it is pretty funny, and I've got to respect this guy for getting away with this. Last year, a 39-year-old man from Parramatta was found to be in possession of a Lamborghini Huracan, a Harley Davidson V-Rod, and a couple Rolexes, all valued at easily over 500 grand. Now there's nothing illegal about having these things in your possession, but the real kicker was that this guy was on Centrelink claiming unemployment. Now funnily enough, the year before, a Lamborghini that he was leasing was firebombed. Now the police caught up to him because it was pretty obvious that he had some unexplained wealth, and he was arrested and charged with various different things. But just because someone's on Centrelink doesn't mean they can't have a Lamborghini, right? He could have won big on the pokies, won big on the scratchies, or maybe he had some politician friends who helped him out with some insider trading. Anyway, just remember it's not illegal unless you get caught. And on that note, it's time to get into our final criminal of today's video. Now this next one has to top our list of Australia's dumbest criminal of recent times. It's common knowledge that when you rob something, you want to have a disguise so that you can't get pinched for it. People usually wear a balaclava or something else so that you can't tell who they are. Well, this man had the same idea, except he decided to walk into the store and then put the balaclava on. Now the only excuse I can think of is the fact that most servos, after it gets dark, have to manually let you in, and they're not going to just let some dude in wearing a balaclava already. But come on, man. Seriously? But as stupid as this is, as far as I'm aware, they haven't actually caught the guy. I mean, this happened way back in 2018, so maybe they have, but I couldn't find any updates. But hey, at least he didn't set himself on fire. And on that note, it's time to end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one.